Okay, so page 110 from Vihine. And we're talking about the two ways that Hashem deals with the world, the two hanhagas of Hashem. They have two different methods, attributes, you could say, of how Hashem runs the world. So he's going to go over that again, which we spoke about last week, and then add some stuff to it. Vihine. So the first one was midas schar va'onesh, that the way Hashem deals with the world is that He rewards people who do mitzvos, and He punishes people that do averos, that do sins. V'hinei, lefi midas schar va'onesh, mishpatei Hashem emes, the justice of Hashem is true. Laseis la'ish kidrachav, He repays a person based on the way he goes. Mida keneged mida, measure for measure. V'harbe drachim l'makom l'shalim la'adam kipa'alo. And there's many ways that Hashem could repay a person. He doesn't have to get rewarded right away. He doesn't have to get punished right away. He can get punished or rewarded in many, many different methods of how Hashem is going to do that. In many ways, for each person according to his way, whether it's to punish him or to reward him. Oh, and by the way, but this shir is dedicated in memory of Tzudik ben Leib by the Miaskovsky family. I have to say that at the beginning. Okay. So that was the first way, midas schar va'onesh. Now the second way is what we call hanhagas hayichud, or hanhagas shlita, where Hashem is directing the world to its final completion. The world now, we've said many times in the Sefer, is in an imperfect state where there's evil which exists, but in the end of the day, the world as a whole is going to reach its perfection, where evil will be destroyed, and the entire world will recognize the oneness of Hashem. So we learned that Hashem, behind the scenes, is pushing the world to that final conclusion, to that final state where everyone will recognize Hashem as one and the world will be destroyed. So in addition to Hashem operating the world with midas schar va'onesh, because it could be, if there was only midas schar va'onesh, where Hashem is rewarding those who do good and punishing those who do evil, hypothetically the world could exist like that forever, because maybe people on their own would not rectify the world, and there would always be evil in the world. It could just go on like that and on like that forever and ever, that there would always be evil. But we said, no, that's not how the world works. That's one way Hashem operates the world, but in addition, there's a second way where He's continuously pushing the world to its final conclusion. In according to the Atzas Tuvo, that Hashem is bringing back the complete goodness to the world, for the total rectification, that will be in the end of days. And on this it says, the pasuk, Ani Hashem lo shanisi, I'm Hashem, I don't change. And the Medrash of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai it says, Lo ishtani b'chol asar, I don't change in any land. He says the first hanhaga, when it comes to reward and punishment, that we could see. Where you could see many times a righteous person who gets rewarded and a evil person who gets punished, right? Not all the time. Right? Certain people, it's going to be in Olam Haba, the next world, where they get rewarded and punished. But we can see this. However, when it comes to the second attribute of Hashem, how Hashem's directing the world to its completion, that is very, very deep. And we're not going to understand it until the end. Meaning only after the world is rectified, then with hindsight we could go back and see how all of these events that we didn't understand at the time, how they were really a step to reach the final conclusion, the final tikkun, the final rectification of the world. However, even though we don't see it now, Hashem is constantly pulling strings behind the scenes at all times, even now as we're speaking. So like we mentioned last week, if you would just look at the world through hanhagas schar va'onesh, reward and punishment, things like the Holocaust, very difficult to understand. Now again, not explaining why the Holocaust happened, but once we know that there's a second way that Hashem operates the world, which is that all of humanity should recognize the oneness of Hashem, then we could start to understand why these tragedies happened. But as the Ramchal says here, we're really not going to understand the full depth of how it happened until the end, meaning when Mashiach comes. Vishnevsky used to say, right, when Mashiach comes, it's going to be a big history lesson. We're going to see why all of the tragedies and all the events in history had to happen to push this world to its conclusion. Right? Certain things we could hypothesize about. We just had Corona, so you can look at what did Corona teach the world. Corona taught the world that human beings really aren't in charge, and as powerful and technologically advanced as we are, we're really not in charge at all. We can't run the world. A little virus that nobody could see could wreak havoc on the world, on the economy, on the socio-political areas and everything. So perhaps part of the reason that happened was to show humanity's not in control and God's the only one that's in control, because the ultimate tikkun, the ultimate rectification of the world is going to happen when everyone realizes that there's one God and He's in control. But as the Ramchal is saying, to know definitively why all these happens, it's only going to be when Mashiach comes at the end of days. And but we know He says it's operating at all times. Hashem is operating this way at all times, and it's very, very deep. We can't really understand it, but we know that there's these two hanhagas which exist. V'nimtza shevadei kavash ha'adam baruch hu kiviyachol es chok shleimuso b'riyas hanivraim ha'ele. Now, for sure, Hashem, kiviyachol, so to say, He in His creations He did not create them in total perfection. Ubarim chaseim v'lo shleimim. The way Hashem created the world, we mentioned before that He could have created the world where everything is going to be perfect. The world is going to reach its ultimate. He could have created it the way that it's going to be in the end, where the world is totally perfect. But He didn't create it that way. He created the world with lacking, with deficiencies, with evil in the world. So obviously Hashem didn't have to make the world like that. Hashem could have made the world totally complete, but He didn't. He made a space in the world for sinners and deficiencies and sins and punishments and destruction and damage. Sha'alav misav eskol hagilgul hagalgal davar yom biyomo umamshech divrei tov ra'atzmo ligmor b'tikun shalim b'koach yichud shlitasi yizbarach shemo. Now, even though He made all of these things, meaning He made the world incomplete, and it has the possibility for evil to exist, and the world can therefore have sinners and kilkulim and destruction, nevertheless, He says Hashem is operating behind the scenes to make the world perfect. He is operating, pulling the strings behind the scenes to make the world totally complete. Okay, so we have these two hanhagas operating with Hashem at the same time. Now, let's go to Memtes. Let's finish this here. In the English one, he breaks this up to paragraphs, so let's go a little bit further. Amra Hanashama, says the soul. And again, the soul in this book is he translated the student, the one asking the questions, and the intellect is the one answering the questions. So the Neshama says, Tichol ma shaviyarta ad ko. Please summarize what you've said until now. Amar Seichel, says the intellect. Shtei midosh shama kadosh baruch hu l'nahig bam olamo. Hashem created two ways, two attributes that He deals with the world, that He runs the world. Achas midas hamishpat. One is the attribute of justice. Va'achas midas shlita v'amshala hayechidus. And the other is the midah of yichud and sovereignty. Midas hamishpat hi midas hatov hara. The midah of justice is that of good and evil. Shavat luyim kol inyani hatovos v'haros b'chol the same, and that is dependent. That has to do with all of the good and evil and everything that comes out of it in the world. Umakora midahu hester pnei tuva v'helim shleimuso. And the source of that is the concealment of God's goodness and perfection. Because for evil to exist, evil exists because Hashem, so to say, concealed Himself. Midas hamamshala. Now the second midah, the midah of God's sovereignty, hayechidus, he midas tikun kol nivraim b'kochel yizbarach, is the midah of rectification of the world through Hashem. Even though the world on itself isn't fit for this rectification. But Hashem, nevertheless, behind the scenes in a hidden way, is directing the ways of justice themselves to bring about the ultimate rectification. I think that means also that certain times, if it was just the midas hamishpat, there could be certain sins that a person would do that would be kind of with a very, let's say, light punishment. For instance, we mentioned when Abraham said, how do I know that I'm going to inherit the land? So really, according to the midas hamishpat, it was a very, slight miscalculation Abraham Avinu made, that he would have gotten a very, it wouldn't be such repercussions for what he did. But because of the midas Shlita, the Midas Memshala of Midas HaYichud, that the Jewish people needed to be created. So Hashem used that slight miscalculation of Abraham to put the Jewish people in Egypt so that they could be slaves there and eventually be redeemed and then receive the Torah, because it was necessary to have the Jewish people receive the Torah to bring the world to its final rectification. So it's just how to calculate perhaps the severity of the, we'll say, punishment or what has to happen, but not that the midos are being overlooked totally. And the source of this is the simple goodness of Hashem, that even though it's hidden from us, Hashem does not stop from overlooking everything and bringing it to good. The attribute of justice is what's revealed to us and seen. And the attribute of shlita, of sovereignty of Hashem, that is something which is hidden. And like he said, we're not going to understand about how all of these world events, what the meaning of them were, and how Hashem was manipulating events behind the scenes until the end, until Mashiach comes.
Good.